Hey everybody, Dr. Dave Marquis here, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you about lab testing. There's a few things that I think all human beings should know about themselves, and one of the ways that I personally like to get to know those things is through getting objective labs on myself, and I encourage this for my patients as well. Laboratory testing can be endless, and it can also be costly. Being specific and focused on those tests that would have the most meaning, impact, and useful information that can guide you in how to take action to improve your health, of course, has more value. And so helping people kind of walk through this process of determining what types of tests they might need is one of the things that I really specialize in helping people to do. Each individual that might sit with me has their own history and unique situation that might lead to unique tests, but there are actually kind of a bell curve of common tests that I could be an advocate for anyone knowing. A few of the things that I encourage people to understand about themselves is their propensity towards inflammation, and so there's a group of tests that can help to understand that. The types of food that their system might be able to metabolize most efficiently, and so there's a group of tests for that. And then also micronutrient balance is another category that I find to be very useful so that individuals can understand if what they're sticking in their mouth is actually being metabolized appropriately. That's one grouping of staple tests that I like to look at. Recently, there's been advances in specialty testing that I've begun to embrace to the point where it might even become part of my 80th percentile. The only rate limiting step would be the cost associated with it, but for some individuals it might be very valuable. So I wanted to take a moment today and share some information on one particular concept in testing. See, many times people have in the background of their mind a worry about cancer, and they'll come in and they'll say, hey, can you do some cancer testing on me? And I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of different tests that you can look for cancers, and they're very specific to specific cancers. For example, the prostate, you could look at your PSA, and although that's not a cancer test, if it's elevated, it does increase the probability of there being a problem there. For your ovaries, your uterus, your breast, there's one called CA-125. That's not specific to those tissues only, and it certainly doesn't connote that you have a cancer specifically, but if it's elevated, it does lend credence to there being a problem in one or more of those tissues. You get the idea. So there really hasn't been an efficient way to test for cancers beyond a biopsy. That's actually the only way that you can diagnose a cancer, is to take the tissue, send it to a pathologist, and have them confirm that yes, in fact, this cell has changed, it's mutated, it's no longer a healthy cell, it's cancer. And then they can tell you what type and what stage. So blood testing by and large has only been a predictor. And the test that recently came across my desk is another predictor. So it does not confirm or negate cancer, but it does help to give an individual the potential to identify things that may be happening at an earlier stage than we've been able to see them previously. That test is called Galleri. What's unique about this test is it's not looking for one specific cancer type. They found a commonality, and this is kind of exciting. All cellular material, when it breaks down, gives off non-cellular DNA. It's just a natural byproduct of cells dying and sloughing. This is true of healthy cells. It's also true of cancerous cells. And so they found that you can actually look at non-cellular DNA, and on that DNA there's different what are called methylation markers. You can determine if a cell has been mutating by looking at this non-cellular DNA, and you can actually get a pretty close approximation of what tissue it came from when you look at the markers of methylation. They found that they can determine over 50 different types of cancer through this test. You can get it at a much earlier stage than any other test that has been available so far. So it appears to be a very good screening tool. Matter of fact, it has 99.5% sensitivity and specificity. So it's a highly useful test in evaluating if an individual is experiencing some type of cellular change, and that I find to be a good tool to motivate people to make lifestyle changes. Because the earlier you make lifestyle changes, the greater the probability of the body being able to identify those mutating cells on its own and eradicate them. That's a win-win right there. Those other tests that I mentioned relative to inflammation, that would be on a standard blood chemistry, and there's certain things that I love to look at there, like homocysteine, CRP-HS, fibrinogen, myeloperoxidase, your essential fatty acid profile, your blood sugar markers, including your A1C, which is your 3-month average of glucose, and your insulin. Looking at these things in total help us to understand how well an individual is handling their lifestyle, their diet, if they're being exposed to more inflammation than a body should, and help to encourage them to make lifestyle changes so that they can dial it back. Take the time to work with a practitioner that does testing so that you can take those proactive steps to understand yourself, where your weak points might be, and then work on strengthening those. I hope this has been helpful information, and I encourage you to be well.